Today we are going to talk about unit of life. Basically, this whole topic is about cells. It is quite a short topic, but there's quite a number of things to memorize, especially if you are new to this cells topic. Okay, so why is it called unit of life? That's because cells is the smallest form of life. So all living things is basically made out of cells. Okay, cells can be living things can be unicellular. That means they are only made out of one cell. So the word uni means one. So single cell organism is called unicellular organism. Okay, some common examples of unicellular are bacteria and yeast that you should have learned in P3. Okay, yeast is a fungi in case you forget, and amoeba. Okay, amoeba maybe you would not have learned about it, but in secondary school you should come across. Since cells are very tiny, so unicellular organisms, right, since they are only made of one cells, so most unicellular organisms are microorganisms. That means we cannot see it, okay, unless you have a microscope. Okay, then other organisms that are made of multiple cells, right, they are called multicellular organisms. Okay, simple as that. So for example, human beings, us, we are considered multicellular organism because we are made of a lot of cells. Okay, let's talk about multicellular organism. We are a classic example of multicellular organisms. We are made of billions of cells, not millions, but billions. Okay, so one cell is just called a cell. Okay, when you have a group of cells, it's called tissue, and then many tissue will come together to form an organ. So the biggest organ on our body is our skin. So your skin cells form your skin tissue and then become your skin, or in this diagram, your heart cells form your heart tissue, and then many heart tissue forms your heart, which is an organ. So all these different, because we have many organs, right? These organs work together as a system. Okay, last year you should have learned some some systems already or like your respiratory, your circulatory and whatnot. Okay, so your heart, your blood vessels, they are all organs, right? So they form your circulatory system, for example. So many organs, like I say, come together to form your system. Okay, then all these systems works together to function as a organism, okay, as a multicellular organism. Okay, so for us, we have more than 10 systems, right? So all these systems works together. Okay, can make us lah. Okay. Okay, let's look at the animal cells. Our cells will look like this most of them, because we are animals, we are mammals. You need to memorize how to draw. You know the different parts name. You know what each part do. Okay, because during exam, sometimes they'll ask you to draw. Okay, and you need to label them. Okay, let's look at the first part, which is the cell membrane. So cell membrane is the most outer layer of the cell. It controls the substances entering and leaving. How they do that, we'll talk about it later. The nucleus can be known as the brain of the cell, okay, because it controls all the activity within the cell. It also contains genetic information. Okay, genetic information is basically information passed down from your parents to you, okay. So for example, your hair cells will tell you, the genes in your hair cells will tell you what hair color you will have, okay. And this hair color information is passed down from your parents to you. So for example, if you are Asian with black hair, your parents have both black hair, this black hair information will be passed down to you. That's why you also have black hair. Okay, the other one is the middle part. The middle part of the cell where all the activity happens is your cytoplasm. Okay, this is seldom tested, but you still need to know. Okay, cytoplasm basically allows the substances to move within the cell. Of course, the cell is not so simple. Okay, cell is actually quite complex. There's a lot of things going on there. So there are actually other parts that you will learn in primary school. Okay, like for example, your ribosome, your mitochondria. Okay. Now I'll talk about how cell membrane function. Actually, you don't need to know how cell membrane function. But again, during exam, sometimes they'll show you a bag. Then they'll tell you this bag, right? Maybe it's just water at first, but if you soak this bag of water into a container that has black ink, why is it that the ink can pass through? it's a bit confusing now, but let me just try to explain to you. So why is cell membrane called membrane? Okay, because it's like a partition. Okay, it's blocking things from coming in and going out. That's why it's called membrane. Membrane actually is semi-permeable. You don't need to know this word. Okay, it is not tested in primary school, but you need to know uh, how does the membrane do this thing called why is it called semi-permeable. It's not tested, but you need to know, like I say, how does the cell membrane controls the substances going in and coming out. So this is just a typical cell, as you can see. Okay, for example, okay, so if you zoom in far enough, you realize that actually there are some gaps in between the cell lah. Of course, it's not so big lah, but I draw it so it's easier to explain. Okay, so this is how a cell look like. This is the cell. The outside is just its environment where substances flow. Okay, now as I was saying, there will be some substances outside of cell lah. Okay, and they will try to go in to the cell. Okay, so the cell membrane will try to stop them for certain parts. So obviously, a cell, like I say, is the unit of life. So they still need to have energy. They still need to have water and oxygen. So let's think of this as a water and oxygen. So they'll be able to go in partially because they are small enough, and also because the cells will allow them to go in. Okay, the cells is quite smart lah. You know what is friendly and what is unfriendly. That means they will know what to allow to come in and what not to allow to come in. Okay, certain substances where it's too big cannot enter the cell membrane lah, because they are too big. Okay, and then of course there are some substances that may be small enough, but the cells will deem it as not useful or harmful, so you won't allow them to come in. Okay, so that's how the cell membrane works. Okay, let's talk about the plant cells. The plant cell is typically pretty much the same as an animal cell. Okay, but you need to take note of something, which is the cell membrane. Okay, because a lot of students, when they draw cell membrane, right, they will draw wrongly. Okay, because they will think that the cell membrane is on the outside. No, the cell membrane is on the inside. Okay, the other thing you need to take note that there's a third layer here, quite big. A lot of students will think that this is the cell membrane or whatever. This is not. This is actually called a vacuole. But vacuole is not tested in primary school, so you all don't need to know it. But you would still need to be able to draw them out. Okay. Then you also have the cell wall. So the most outer layer of the plant cell is not the cell membrane. For animal cell, the most outer part is the cell membrane. But for the most outer layer of plant cell is the cell wall. Okay. So their function, in terms of nucleus, cytoplasm, and cell membrane, is the same as animal cell. But let's look at the cell wall. So the cell wall, what it does, the cell wall support and give the cell shape because it's quite strong. Okay, so that's why it's able to give it shape. Okay, so animal cells, right, their shape can change from time to time depending on what they receive. Okay, but for plant cells, the shape is quite fixed because of the cell wall. Okay, and it also prevents the cell from bursting. What do I mean by prevent it from bursting? So like I said, the cell wall is very strong. So if let's say, for example, this plant cell, right, it keeps taking in and taking in more things, right, it will have a limit to how much it can take because the cell wall is limiting its size. Okay, that's why it won't burst, as compared to animal cells that there's a chance that it can take in too much substances and then it bursts. Now let's look at the leaf cell. Now actually a leaf cell comes from a plant. So a leaf cell is also a plant cell. Okay, so all leaf cells are plant cell, but not all plant cells are leaf cell, because plants contain other parts. It can be your stem, it can be your roots. So when you talk about plant cell can be your root hair cell. It can also be from the stem. Okay, now let's look at the leaf cell. Actually the leaf cell again is pretty much the same as your plant cell, like this. It's pretty much the same. It has all these parts. It has cell wall, nucleus, cytoplasm. But the leaf cell also have one extra thing, which is called the chloroplast. Okay, so we should know that leaf helps the plant trap light to make food, right? So why is it so special? Why is it that only the leaf can trap light to make food? That is because the leaf contains this thing called chlorophyll. Okay, you should know this really. And chlorophyll trap light. So where is chlorophyll found? It is found in the chloroplast of the plant cell. Okay, So this chloroplast function basically allows the plant to trap light. Okay. The second point is actually not a function, but it is like a side effect to the leaf lah. So the reason why the leaf is green is because it has chlorophyll in it, and chlorophylls contain green pigmentation that cause them to turn green. You can think of green pigmentation as green coloring lah. That's why when the cells die, right? Sorry, not the cells die. When the leaf die, right? For example, we see fallen leaves on the road, right? They are not green in color. That's because the plant died already, so the chlorophyll is dead. So when the chlorophyll is dead, there'll be no more green pigmentation. That's why they are no longer green. Okay. Now let's look at the other commonly tested plant cells lah. Okay, it's the root hair cells. Of course, the roots don't make food lah. Okay, most of the roots don't make food, so they don't have a chloroplast. Okay, but you realize something very special about the root hair cell. It's quite long. Okay, especially this part here. This you will think that it looks a bit unnecessary. The reason why it's so long is because they want to increase the surface area. Why you want to increase surface area? That's because the function of the roots is to take in water and minerals, right? So the more surface area it has, it can take in water and minerals at a faster rate. So that's the reason why lah. Also, the root hair cell is usually longer to have more surface area so that it can take in water at a faster rate. Okay, just now I was saying about chloroplast is only found in leaf cell, right? Actually, it's not 100% true, but for primary school level, you just take it as that lah. Because, for example, you just think about broccoli. Okay, broccoli is actually a flower lah. But why is it green? Also because it has a chlorophyll. Also, you expect to find chloroplast in broccoli. So at the end of the day, most as long as it has chloroplast, most likely it is leaf cell lah. But don't worry, during exam they won't be that tricky. So during exam, once they show you that there's chloroplast, you must know it is a leaf cell. Okay. Until here, you just need to know actually cells, they come in all shapes and sizes. As you can see, I showed you just now. Where this is a leaf cell, these are root cells, but they are not limited. Cells are not limited to only rectangle and like this. Like the root hair cell, it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So don't memorize the shape, instead memorize their parts. Okay, you need to recognize the parts to be able to tell what type of cells it is. Okay, since cells is a living thing, right? It is alive, right? So that means it will also die. Okay, so what happens when the cell die? Don't worry lah. It's like the human population. Why is it that human beings haven't been extinct yet? That's because although every day there are people dying, but every day there are new human beings being born to replace the dead lah. Okay, in a way. So most cells, they are produced by dividing themselves. Why they say most? Because actually not all cells can divide themselves. Okay, but most cells can. So they just divide themselves. How they do that? I'll just show you a diagram. It's easier to be explained. Okay, so generally the cells will grow bigger and bigger. Okay, after that, when it comes to a sufficient size, you divide itself into two, along with the nucleus in it lah. So that's the reason why your whole body parts, you don't change your skin color suddenly. For example, that is because when we all started with one cell, and all our cells starts dividing themselves. So now you have billions of cells in your body, right? Okay, and they all come from the same cell, so therefore you have the same genes throughout your body. Okay. It is like I say, to the purpose of cell division is to replace dead and damaged cells lah. Because every day there will be cells dying, so you need to have new cells to replace them. Okay, so let's say, so when you have more cells produced than the cells dying every day, that means at the end of the day you will have more cells lah. So let's just think about it simply lah. For example, you have 1 million yeah, 10 new cells today. Okay, so but today, although you have 10 new cells, but only 8 cells die, so actually you have 2 extra cells. Okay, something like that. Of course, if there's a you produce less cell than the cells die, then you have less cells at the end of the day. Okay, so when you have more cells, that means you are growing lah. Okay, however, take note this is quite commonly tested as well. That's why I wrote it down. Okay, red blood cells, right? It doesn't have nucleus. Okay, and it doesn't do cell division. So since it doesn't do cell division, that means it don't divide itself. That's the reason is because they come from bone marrow lah. Bone marrow is an organ responsible for producing it, but you don't need to know bone marrow. You just need to know that red blood cells don't do cell division, and you know that red blood cells don't have nucleus. Why is red blood cells so special? Why it doesn't have nucleus? It's because evolutionary wise, it's our red blood cells doesn't have nucleus so that it can have more space to carry more water, more minerals, more digested food, more air. Okay, you should know this lah. You should know that red blood cells is responsible for carrying them. So that's why without the nucleus, which take out a huge amount of space, as you can see, the nucleus take out a lot of space. So without the nucleus, the red blood cells can carry substantially more substances. Okay. Now, so this is the final page now. This is how the different types of cells compare with each other. Okay, basically, animal cells won't have cell wall and chloroplast. Okay, and for plant cells, they will have cell wall, but they won't have chloroplast unless it is a leaf cell. Okay, that's all.